Good morning. This is House Talk with Wally Kerr. I'm your host, Dave McKay. Joining me this morning, as always, bright and early, is Wally Kerr. Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. My voice is just off a little bit, but as they say, the show must go on.
You sound a little stopped up this morning, but we're here early in the morning to help people understand more about real estate, buying and selling, and hang in there with that cold.
First off, let's just jump right in. What do we have coming up on today's show? What are the topics?
So we're going to talk today on a segment we've never touched on, and that is extra costs and things to consider when building a home in the country or building on a piece of land.
Okay.
I think a lot of our listeners will enjoy that. One of the reasons is a lot of folks can't seem to find what they want in town, so they're looking around for land and thinking it'd be nice to build in the country. Everything's turning green, so people's fancies turn to the country. They drive around. Gosh, it's beautiful outside. Hey, honey, wouldn't it be great to live out in the country, have our own privacy, no neighbors, be out with nature? So we're going to talk about that a little bit today.
Fantastic.
We're going to talk about getting wealthy, buying investment property. So,
yes,
Dave, on May 6th, as we talked about last week, I'm going to start my first ever Get Wealthy by Investing in Real Estate webinar. It won't be a place where anybody has to go sit in a room. You can go to wallytalkshouses.com, and up at the very top, next to the subscribe button, you can go in and register for this Get Wealthy buying real estate or buying investment property. Cindy and I have done that over the years. Also mentioned that last week.
Yes.
And, a lot of our net worth is in real estate. And so we'll talk about that some today. Along with that, we'll talk about what percentage. This was a topic that you brought up, Dave. I asked you and said, what do you think we ought to talk about? We've talked about a lot of subject material.
Yes.
And you came up with this one.
How much of my income should be spent on a home? What do I know is the right amount to put towards a home? Am I overextending myself? Do I have a little bit more I can pull from that? Or what basically is the sweet spot for maybe percentage of income going into a home?
Excellent. I loved your idea, and that's one of our topics today. Good. And then how about a little bit of fun? Here, during the show today, we're going to throw in a true or false quiz. Do you know the answers to these questions? Because there are some misperceptions. Things are sometimes misconstrued.
Sure.
And maybe we can help you with one or two items today. So we'll do a true or false phase
Do
today.
I get to answer some of those to see how many I get right? Or?
Well, if you want me to, I'll ask you the questions. I thought you'd ask me the questions, but if you want me to, we'll have fun, and I'll ask you the questions, and then while you ponder, I'll just drink my Starbucks, and we'll see if you get them right or not. How's that?
Okay. Tell me what's gone on the last week, current market update. How are we on homes sold this last week and homes that are available in the metro?
Okay, good. Let's start off with the Fed. We've been talking about the Fed for a couple of months now. Good news this week, Dave. The Consumer Price Index numbers were released this week, and the news was good, is that inflation is being kept moderately in check right now.
Good.
We talked about last week's show that I believe, and it's not just me, I read a lot because I'm very interested in what real estate and money are going to do. And it would appear that the Fed really, in a lot of people's minds, economists, those who are watching the market, believe the Fed's already made the corrections they need to make and that they've raised the rate enough times. 9 rises in the Fed's overnight rate that they charge to banks to loan money. So the good news is the Consumer Price Index numbers showed this week that commodities, that prices have not gone up as much over the last month. That should allow the Fed to begin to cool its heels. And I really, truly think that the announcement for you and me and our listeners, whether it's 30 days from now or 90 days from now, I think that announcement's going to be, hey, folks, we're kind of done raising the rates and we may need to do it once more this next year. But that will lead for the ability for interest rates to begin to pull back and come back down.
Nice.
We might see the 5s this year. I think there's a really, really big chance we see rates in the 5s this year.
Okay, good.
So you ask about the number of homes that have sold over the last week.
Yes.
That number's been very consistent over the last 3 weeks. The market's hot. It's selling season. It's buying season, right?
Yes.
A lot of people buying homes. A lot of people that can't find what they want in an existing home. So they are turning to a new home. They're going to builders and saying, I just am not willing to go purchase this existing home that I'm not just totally in love with and give a premium price. So I think I'll go buy that home that's partially under construction and, hey, can I pick the tile colors? Can I pick the countertops? Can I paint a bedroom blue? And they're talking to the builders about doing these things. So a lot of people buying new homes right now. I think my first message today would be, if you don't know exactly when that home's going to be done, but you know exactly when the builder's going to want you to close, and that is when it's done, when it is
Sure,
done.
absolutely.
You may have a home to sell, and you might be working on that timing in your mind. A little bit worried about what happens if maybe the interest rates could go up again this year, right?
Yes.
Could happen.
Sure.
Based on what you and I have seen, each week and each month, they're analyzing what's going to happen with rates. So what if the builder gets your new home done, and it just happens to be that 1 month where the Fed decides to raise its rate again and the interest rates go up?
Ooh.
And you might think, how does that affect me selling my home?
Yes.
What happens if the new
Yes,
home
that's
is
true.
done in September and school starts in September and the state fair is in September and the kids are back in school and nobody really wants to move the kids as much when they've just started school?
That's right.
So we've offered, as you know, a guaranteed sale program that just says in the unlikely event that we place someone's home for sale, like yours, and it doesn't sell in an agreed period, we'll step in and buy that home for cash.
Yes.
That's going to help a lot of people that are building a home or to have a home that's under construction right now, or especially when they don't know the exact closing date's going to be. I can take, Cindy and I and my team can take the stress off of you for worrying about having two house payments at the same time.
That's a big stress.
What if the market slows?
Yes.
We've certainly seen those times. October, November, December, January, it got pretty slow. So if you're considering building, you may be buying a home that has just started. It may be under construction, or you may be building a custom home. And when there's a custom home, Dave, and people are doing custom features that don't really fit inside the builder's normal plan of A to B to C to D to E.
Yes.
Maybe somebody makes a very custom selection on the flooring inside the home. Suddenly you order the flooring and the supply house says, well, we had enough to do half the house. And that's not so great.
I've heard those stories before.
Yes. So it could delay the project and you just don't know when the new home's going to be done. What if you put your home on the market too soon and then you find yourself living in a cramped apartment because you didn't have a place to live with your pets or your kids or a lot of your possessions? And so, again, this is where the Guaranteed Home Sale Program can help a lot of people.
Okay, so let me ask this. Let's go right into the first topic here, because buying out in the country, like you said, love driving out, seeing the little rolling hills, thinking, boy, a house right up on top of that hill by the little creek bed or the little pond would be beautiful. And I can imagine that on one side, building in the city, it's the home builder knows exactly this plot of land, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So many more factors building out in the country. And I imagine that also skews timelines way out of whack, even more so maybe than even in the city. So does that also change, or does that help also with your guaranteed sale program, where if someone wanted to build out in the country, you can work with them on that as well? Or is it the same, but the timeline just changes a little
that's
bit?
correct. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So the guaranteed sale program is always there, whether you're building in town or out in the country. When you're building in the country, there's more contractors involved, there's more services, and there's some things people might not have thought about, which I thought we'd talk about today.
Sure.
Okay?
Great.
The big one, Dave, is financing.
Okay.
The big one's financing. So I wouldn't say that first-time buyers don't build in the country, but I'd say it's more common for a second or third or fourth or fifth or more, home buyer to go build in the country.
Sure.
So the big one is the financing gig. I think a lot of people don't think about this. And as we talked about topics for this week's show, Cindy and I, my wife, were talking about it, and she said, I really think, Wally, the big one's financing, because a lot of people just think they're going to come up with a 10% down payment and have the builder go buy a lot, and the builder's going to go out and build them a custom home, and that the builder's going to take care of all the financing. And that's not typically the case. Now,
Okay.
Dave, if the builder's already building in that neighborhood and it's in the country, and it's a spec home, speculative,
Sure.
okay, then you pretty much just go to the builder's lender, right?
Yes.
But if I'm going to go buy land, first of all, if you're going to buy in a platted subdivision where there are restrictions about what you can and can't do, we call those covenants or restrictions. It's you
I've
can
heard
do
of
this,
that.
but you can't do that. You can't park a tow truck in your yard. You can't
Sure.
you can't raise pigs on your property, Okay, now some people don't want that, and they'd prefer to go just onto an unrestricted piece of land with no improvements on it. You're going to need 35% of the cost of the lot of your own money to get financing with most lenders.
So is that because the lender sees it as more of a risk because it's just this plot of land out here and not in a division where they know that if something falls through, someone else is going to come through because they're building homes left and right there. This is a unique situation. So it's a little bit more risk, so they want a little bit more money up front.
That's it. I think you hit the right word. There is 4 letters, R-I-S-K.
Okay.
It's the risk.
Yes.
So they want so let's say you find a lot that's $100,000. Well, you need $35,000 down payment to go finance that, and the bank is not going to go give you a 20 or 30-year loan. Most of those loans are going to be amortized like the payment would be over 15 or 20 years.
Okay.
But normally with a 5-year balloon. So the payments are going to be somewhat high. You're going to need a lot of money out of pocket. Now, if you go into a platted subdivision, it's typically 20% down, where the utilities are already set up, the roads are in. That's a big part of it here is how accessible is this property?
Sure.
What if you go build a nice big custom home, but you put in a really rough gravel driveway? The lender is concerned if they foreclose
Yes.
and take the house back, that it's just not going to be a really good road into the property. Maybe the drainage isn't done right. What happens when it really rains super hard outside and it washes the road out? Maybe you can't get up to the home.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't put in a culvert and there's too much water out by the roadway. So financing is a really, really big one because you need a builder to manage the trade contractors. How would you like, Dave, to go build your own home and be in charge of the framer, the brick people, the concrete people, the electricians, the plumbers, the trim people, the roofer? You get the idea?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a headache waiting for me.
That's a
Some people can manage
full-time
that,
job.
but I couldn't. I need help.
Me too. We built our last home 5 years ago. We didn't do it on our own. And I know that there are services out there that offer things like that, and you hear them on the radio too, but that's a lot of work, and I think you need a lot of time available to do that. I think you can save some money, but I think you can spend a lot of time. So, it's just not going to be, I think what I want people to understand is don't assume you're just going to go put 10 or 20% down, build a custom home in the country, and the builder's going to take on everything, including the financing.
Sure.
So the financing is going to be a big one. A couple of the other things we came up with, in fact, there's several, is remember there's a cost for clearing the land for your home site. So it's got to be cleared, got to get the tree roots out, got to be able to typically put in a well and septic. Okay, you got to get utilities up to the home. But you certainly get into things like, is it going to be a total electric home? Am I going to do natural gas? And if it's not available, I'm going to go to propane. And propane is quite a bit higher than natural gas. I'm on propane because I'm on a large acreage in the country, and I wish I had natural gas available. I've certainly seen places where there is city water or natural gas available, but it's across the road. And so to get it over to somebody's lot they're going to build on in the country, they have to bore underneath the road.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't get done for $12.50. There's a real expense to that.
Oh, I bet. Yes.
So you got to think about utilities. How are you going to heat? How are you going to cool? Are you going to do geothermal, which is quite expensive? Or are you going to do a total electric home? And you better budget the cost of a total electric home, and you probably ought to foam it. We've never talked about construction a lot, but they probably want to spray foam it on the inside, which is what we did.
Okay.
That saves a lot on utilities instead of just standard insulation. That comes at a cost. It does. Installing the driveway, a well and septic system, a water well.
Yes.
Doing well and septic, I think today, I don't know that you can touch well and septic for $10,000. Probably more like $15,000 to $20,000, depending on how far you have to drill for water.
When you dig for a well, are you doing that right next to the home and you connect it to the home, or is it out a little bit, or how do they do that?
There's a VA guideline for anybody that is a veteran or knows about veterans taking loans, and the water well can't sit closer than 50 feet to the house.
Oh, okay.
Because they don't want pollutants around the water well where it could get down in the water. But yeah, typically, if you're going to drill a well, the people that drill wells know how far they have to go to hit water based on where the land is located.
Okay.
But it could be anywhere from 50 or 75 feet to 200 or 300 feet.
Oh, wow.
So as the well gets deeper, the really good water is this aquifer here locally, water underground.
Yes.
It's called the Garber Wellington.
Yes.
And it's a real soft water, and my parents are in it, and I'm in it. It's a water that you don't even have to put a water softener on.
Nice.
It's really good, tastes good. It's pretty soft if you drill down pretty deep, but you're talking about a big expense there.
Yes.
Some other costs on the septic. Is the land going to perk? If you're using a septic system, you want the sewage system to work right.
Yes.
So you got to drill holes in the ground and go do what's called an absorption test. That's not horribly expensive. Other costs, get a survey. Know where your property corners are. Make sure somebody isn't encroaching over on your land. That's called an encroachment.
Okay.
Internet service costs. Wow. What about high-speed internet? How important is that to you and your family?
Pretty important.
Yeah. Until we were able to get OEC fiber, we found that it was really, really expensive to find a good service. I was spending $100 a month on some service called Exceed, and I could only get 25 megabyte each month for $100. And we went through that really fast.
Yeah.
So if you're gaming or streaming, you're looking for fast service. 100 megabyte is probably minimum. 1 gig service, most people would want today.
Sure.
How about cell phone service?
Well, we'd like to make some phone calls.
What happens if you're out in the country and you don't have very good cell phone service? So I'd be very careful about that.
Yes.
What about how close are you to, say, a hospital if you might have some health issues?
Sure.
What about a fire station? So when you go to Oklahoma insurance agents, they have this thing called Class 9 insurance. And Class 9 means, is there adequate water in the area to put out a fire?
Huh.
Class 9 or Class 10 typically means, I hate to say it and put it this way, but it means the house is going to burn down before they can get it extinguished.
Oh, wow.
So the insurance cost can be very, very high if you're too far out in the country and there is not a fire station close by. And sometimes the volunteer fire stations don't qualify. They've got to be staffed, okay? What about safety? Building in the country has some great positives to having privacy, but you also, once you build, if you haven't put up a fence or some type of security gate, there could be a little false sense of security, especially if that's something that worries you. So that cost should be considered.
You wake up and you open the blinds and there's a cow sitting right there because you didn't put up a fence, and the neighbor's cows came over and they're eating all of your beautiful shrubbery and your flowers that Wally just planted.
That Wally the gardener just did. That's right. And then finally, that's funny. And then finally, the last one is, what's it going to cost to get the builder to drive farther from where they're already doing their projects? Are they going to charge you for their time and gasoline? Yeah, probably so. Do you want the builder out there checking your job every day? Yeah, probably so. So you need to consider the cost for having the builder drive. There's a lot of extra costs and things to consider when building in the country. I can lend my expertise. If you have a question, you're listening today, and you'd like to know more about maybe a question with your building, if you are building or considering building, shoot me a text to 330-3000, and I'll answer it after today's show. Building in the country was fun for us. But I'll tell you, we have a lot of knowledge being in the business for 35 years. And so just the simple fact that we had the knowledge made it easier on us. I don't expect our average listener to know all those things. Again, if I can help, they can text. They don't even have to call me, but they're welcome to call me at 330-3000. I'll be available today after our show wraps up at 8 a.m.
We were talking about financing for building out in the country. Let's just talk about just the next house I want to buy, just in a subdivision or whatever. How do I know, or what's a good gauge of the percentage of my income that I can allocate towards a new home?
This was one of your topics, and I thought it was so pertinent because that's what most people ask us, Dave, is how much down and how much a month? Now, one of the misconceptions, do you have to have 20% down to buy a home?
No.
No, absolutely not. So most people will go either conventional loan with as little as 5% down.
Yes.
An FHA loan with 3.5% down. Let's talk about the Native American loan. A lot of Native Americans here in Oklahoma.
Yes.
So 2.25% down on the FHA Native American program.
Okay.
And then veterans can buy with no money down whatsoever. That's our thank you from the government for them serving our country, the sacrifices they've made, for being away from their families.
Sure.
No matter where they served, reservists have entitlement and the ability to use the VA bill.
Yes.
So let's answer your question. Most homeowners probably have an idea about how much they want it to be each month, but they might not know how much they can afford. So that's always my question is, number one, how much do you want to pay a month? And then number two is, how much can you actually afford per month? It's amazing how many people can afford far more for their payment than what they actually want to pay. I talk to people who say, I don't want my payment to be more than $1,800 a month, and they could qualify for $3,500 or $4,000 a month. A lot of it depends on how much debt you have. So this will lead into answering your question. Mortgage lenders identify this is how much your house payment can be, and this is how much your debts can be.
Okay.
So let's go through a couple of quick examples. FHA and VA loans are underwritten by our government, by the U.S. government. These programs date back to 1934, and they help homeowners, people that want to become homeowners, with either zero down payments or low down payments, depending on whether it's FHA or VA. Again, zero down for a veteran, keeps the closing costs as low as possible, and it's easier to credit qualify.
Okay.
The better your credit is, the better the rate
Sure.
you're going to get. So that leads into the question of what percentage of my income can my house payment be? So let's start with the FHA. Dave, I'd say just a great majority of people, especially first-time buyers, go with FHA financing, but there's also a misconception that FHA loans are only for first-time buyers, and that's not true at all.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You know, the FHA loan maximum now in Oklahoma has gotten really near $400,000. Do you know you could take 7 FHA loans during your lifetime? There's no restriction whatsoever.
I did not know that.
If you're a citizen and you're in the U.S., that is our government's goal, is to make you a homeowner no matter what price range you're at, so long as it falls within the maximum for the state.
Okay.
And again, the maximum loan is, I believe it's, and I should know this, but it's around $390,000, $400,000 for an FHA loan. So on an FHA, here's how it works. Write down, if you're listening to the program today, 31, and then write down 43. So let's make it super simple.
Okay.
Let's say you're making $10,000 a month.
Okay.
Gross monthly income, no expenses taken out, nothing taken out for taxes. These numbers are adjusted based on gross. I'm only going to choose $10,000 a month just for the sake of simplicity, just so that we can work our numbers today. Mm-hmm. So if you're making $10,000 a month, your housing ratio, just your payment for your house, should not exceed 31% of your gross monthly income.
Okay.
You can do that math pretty easy.
Yes.
So $10,000 a month in income, the house payment's not supposed to be more than 31%.
Yes.
It's $3,100 a month, right?
Sure.
My house payment and my debts together, let's say I got a couple credit cards. I've got a nice truck. Okay, my payment's $550, let's say. A couple credit cards. Maybe I've got a little bit of student loan, okay. Back in my past. My total debts and my house payment together should not exceed 43% of my gross monthly income without any expenses out. So what's that example? $10,000 a month in income. I've got to be able to prove that. Okay, that can't just be my word. I've got to prove that to the lender. On commission sales, commission can be tough to qualify on because you might have a really good month and a really slow month. So commissions you have to watch. Mm-hmm. If you're self-employed, that's a different bag, but let's keep it simple. 43% for my debts and my house payment each month. 43% of $10,000 is $4,300.
$4,300,
okay. So that's FHA. Now, if you got a blazing hot credit score and not much debt, those ratios can go up.
Okay.
I've seen that 43 become 50% if you've got low debt and really good income. Okay, so if you're a really good money manager and your credit score reflects that top ratio, it's 31 and 43, and they'll allow that 31 to even go up to 32, 33, 34.
Okay.
They'll allow that top end, that 43% ratio, to approach, say, closer to 50% if you've got good credit and income.
Okay.
Now, conventional loans are different because they're not government. So let's stick with government loans for a minute.
Okay.
For a veteran, here's what's funny, Dave. There's only one ratio. There's not a housing ratio and a debt ratio. It's just debt.
Okay.
And it's 41% on a VA. Let's go back to that same $10,000 a month in income. 41% of $10,000 is $4,100 a month.
Yes.
As long as your debts and your house payment don't exceed $4,100 a month, you qualify. As long as your credit score is good enough.
Okay.
Only one ratio for veterans, and it's just the debt ratio. For FHA, it's house debt ratio and total debt ratio. Same thing. If you've got a really good credit score, you're probably going to be able to exceed that number a bit, but let's just go with what the guidelines are going to be, okay?
Okay.
Conventional loans are different, Dave. They're a little bit more restrictive because they're not underwritten by the federal government like FHA and VA loans are.
Okay.
So those ratios are going to be a bit lower. That's why a lot of people will go to, remember we talked about why do FHA and VA loans exist? Because they're easier on credit qualifying with lower closing costs and a lower down payment.
Yes.
Conventional loans are the remainder of what the market is for the most part.
Sure.
So those ratios, if you want to write these down, if you're listening, they're 28 and 36.
Okay.
So you know what the 28 and 36 are, right?
Sure. 28 is the percentage of what I can qualify for my house payment, and the total debt is the 36.
Bingo. That's it.
Okay.
So use the same numbers. So let's go back to that $10,000 a month in income again.
Okay.
Let's say now you're going to go buy a $700,000 home. Okay. You're not going to be able to get an FHA loan for a $700,000 home if the FHA maximum loan amount is $400,000.
Yes.
We're a little shy, right?
Yes. A little.
But you could have a $300,000 down payment.
Okay, yeah.
And you could still go on an FHA loan, but the disadvantage on an FHA loan is no matter how much you put down, you're still going to pay this ugly little beast that we talked about a few weeks ago called mortgage insurance.
Oh, there it is.
Even with $300,000 down.
It rears its ugly head.
It does. It does.
So why is that? If you're putting down what is that? 45% or something like that.
It's a guideline. It's
Okay.
a guideline. And it's actually to put money into the till for the FHA
Okay.
to make sure that there's money there to take care of home foreclosures the day that those come around.
And you know what? I could see that because the top end being $400,000, and they're saying how much of that $400,000 are you putting in? Well, you're not putting in any because it was a $700,000 home. Sure, I had $300,000. I had a great job, but of that $400,000, how much did I put down? I put down zero. So I could see, yeah, you got to pay mortgage insurance on
Right. And some people do this, and I'll tell you why. Maybe their credit score isn't quite good enough, and so they don't qualify for a conventional loan. Or maybe their debt ratios are a little bit high.
Sure.
They can't quite afford what they want, so they go to the FHA and put a large amount of money down, but you can go refinance out of that at some point if you want to and just pay the loan off. So on a conventional, it's 28% of your gross monthly income, and that's for house payment alone, Dave. And then for house payment and debts, 36%. So in our example of making $10,000 a month in gross monthly income, I want to emphasize that's nothing taken out. No taxes,
Sure.
no utilities, no groceries, nothing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if it was 36% on the what we call the back end ratio, the 28's the front end.
Yes.
That's what your house payment can be.
Yes.
The back end ratio is 36. If you're making $10,000 a month in gross monthly income, that would mean your house payment and debts could be about $3,600 a month.
Okay.
And again, give or take, Dave, if they've got a really smoking good credit score, you're going to be able to get the lender to push those numbers up some for you.
Okay, so I could see just as a ballpark, knowing that it's going to be a little bit different with some of these different types of loans, if I just really spit out there and say 30%. 30% of what I'm bringing home, I could put towards a house. And I know that I might be in the ballpark probably with which one of these programs I'm going to go with.
Yeah, if you went 30% for house payment and 40% for house payment and debts,
Yeah.
you're really close on the numbers. And you know what? That's easier to remember long after our show today.
Sure.
Remember 30%, 0.3, and 40%, 0.4.
Yes.
And the 30% is for house payment, and the 40% is house payment and debts. Hopefully that will help our listeners.
We've been talking about buying in the country and what percentage of our income goes towards buying a house. Okay, we're all interested in buying a home, but on the other side, I have a house that I live in that I need to sell. And we know one of the easiest ways to get an estimate is what? What can they do to get an estimate on their home that someone is currently in now?
Text your address to 330-3000, and then let me know the condition, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best. Tell me if there's any upgrades. You may say your home is a 6. You may say, it's pretty perfect, but there's a few things that need to be done. Maybe that's a 9. Boy, if you just finished a remodel, it's probably a 10 or maybe a 12.
Fantastic.
Right? So
Yes.
text your address. You'll get no phone call, just a text, and I'll give you an estimated value for your home in a pretty tight range, and maybe that will help out.
It's exciting to know kind of what the value of your home is, because then you know what the value of the home that you're looking for is. So that's pretty exciting.
It's nice to know how much you're going to have to spend on your next home and how much down payment you'll have, and for
Yes.
closing costs. It'd be nice to put 20% down, right?
Yes.
To avoid mortgage insurance. I would say, Dave, that most people that have owned their home, let's say 18 months or longer in the Oklahoma City metro area, let's say that's stretching out 20 to even 30 miles out, maybe a little farther, I think you're going to be pretty surprised as to how much your home value has increased over the last 2 to 3 years.
Wow. Okay. I'm excited about this. We're going to have some fun now. Is it real estate quiz time?
It is real estate quiz time. It is.
Okay.
It is time for our first version of real estate true or false. Dave.
Okay. Now, we haven't planned this out. This is just right off the cuff here. Okay.
So these are going to be common perceptions or misconceptions about real estate. So let's start this one today. Your parents pass away,
Okay.
and all of a sudden they're gone. And do you automatically own their home, true or false?
False, because they needed to put it either in a will or a trust. If not, could it go to probate?
That is correct. It really goes to the state.
Okay.
So number one, hey, everybody give Dave. Okay, he's one for
I put
one.
a check
okay?
mark.
That is correct.
Okay.
There needs to be. I'll keep it serious here. There needs to be a directive as to what's going to happen with that
Yes.
property.
Yes.
The state of Oklahoma looks, and if they were to pass, the state would look and say, we need to analyze and see what debts they might have had, see who they might owe money to, and then decide what happens with the house and who it goes to as far as family is concerned.
Okay.
Dave, there's an easy way to fix this. My mother is 90. God bless her. She is such a wonderful woman, and she lives local. And so we put her in title with my two sisters. Cindy and I gave the house to my sisters, and my mother already owned it. We didn't want to be a part of that and wanted my sisters to have that. So what they did was they did a quitclaim deed, which is a real simple document that my mother signed. My father is deceased and passed about 7 years ago. So Mom and Dad were in title as what are called joint tenants with full rights of survivorship. When one of them passed, it passed to the other. So my mom owns the home.
Okay.
Mom signed a deed and said, I, Mrs. Kerr, am passing the home to me, Mrs. Kerr, and my two daughters. And she signed a deed in front of a notary public that said, now the home that I owned on my own is now owned by me and my two daughters together.
Oh, okay. So they already own it.
Here's the deal.
So
they're in as joint tenants.
Okay.
So it's a new joint tenancy, and they all took title at the same time. So if one person were to pass, it goes to the other two. So that's an easy way to fix this that is less than $100 to do, and I think a lot of people might want to consider doing.
Yes.
Okay, you did good on that one. All right. How about another one here? Eminent domain is something I file with the county assessor to protect my home if I ever have to file bankruptcy.
False.
Okay, good. All right. So you know the answer to that one, and everybody probably knows what eminent domain is.
Yes.
Do you know?
I don't know the ins and outs, but eminent domain is, I know this comes up with our local universities have used this. The government uses it when they need to use that land for a purpose, turnpike or highway system or something like that. They can, by virtue of this is a benefit to the state or to the school or to whatever, they have to pay you for the land in your home, correct?
That is correct. They have to appraise it.
Value. But then basically they're telling you have to sell your house and you have to.
They're telling you and me that it's for better use of the public than it is for an individual purpose. Okay. So you don't file eminent domain to keep debt collectors from taking your home and selling it. Let's say that I get into trouble and I file bankruptcy. Can my mortgage company come take my home? And the answer to that is if I keep making my payments, they can't go sell my home to pay debts. That's what homestead exemption is about in Oklahoma.
Ah, okay.
So you go file. If you've owned your home and you were living in it before December 31st of the previous year, before January 1st of the previous year. So if you bought a new home last year, you should have filed homestead exemption before March 31st. And if you didn't, you could file it next year. Saves you money on your taxes and just says if you ever were forced into bankruptcy, your home can't be sold to satisfy your debts. but you got to keep making your house payment.
Sure.
Because that's a different deal called foreclosure.
Sure. All right.
How about another one? Dave, you look online and the Zillow's estimate that you see is going to tell you pretty accurately what your home is worth. True or false?
That's kind of a gray area, but I'm going to say, and I'll explain that, true.
And you've got it partially right. The more sales there are in your area, if you live in a neighborhood and there's 14 home sales, Zillow can see those 14 home sales, and it will probably be accurate up to the point that your home, let's say for a minute you have plantation shutters.
Okay.
Your whole house is solid wood flooring. You put in upgraded appliances. You put in a body spray jet system in your master bathroom.
Yes.
One of those showers like you go to a
Yes.
nice Marriott.
Yes.
That cleans everywhere really well,
Yes, it
right?
does.
What if you put in heated bathroom floors in your home?
All of that is going to change that. And
That is.
Zillow, by just getting your address and looking at your home, doesn't know that. So I get that.
It's a computer and it's not a person.
Sure.
So Zillow's estimates can be pretty good, but be careful.
Sure.
Because if you got a home that's nicer than average or you've done a lot to it, or let's go out in the country. We were talking earlier about building a home in
Yes,
the country, right?
yes.
It's harder for Zillow to find like properties in the country.
So it's going to be far-ranging.
Yes,
It's gonna be
more
whack more on
more
that, so, yeah.
variation, kind of out of whack, as you say, and
Yeah.
probably not as accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, you're 3 for 3. I need to throw you something a little tougher here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. If I sell my home, let's say we're going to pick on you.
Okay.
If you sell your home today and you've got TVs attached to the wall, you get to keep those because they're personal property.
Yes.
You better put them in the contract because it's permanently attached property. So here's the caveat, and I think this will surprise a lot of people.
Okay.
Okay, the TV, if it's mounted on a bracket, the bracket is permanently attached, just like a kitchen cabinet would be permanently attached.
You got me.
So I finally got him on one,
You
folks.
did, I'll say.
So here's what you do.
Okay.
We tell a lot of our owners when I sit down with an owner to place their home for sale, and I notice there's a couple or 2 or 3 or 5 attached TVs, I'll ask them and say, I'd recommend you leave your brackets because if you take the brackets out, you're going to have to paint and fill the holes. The best scenario is probably that somebody else will move in and also want a TV there.
Sure.
Some of my owners will say, well, I bought that bracket for that TV. But in a lot of cases, if you've got a 55-inch up there, the new owner's probably not going to put a 42 in, and they may not put a 75 in. So leave your bracket, but reserve your TVs. And you've got to tell people, because the TV is attached to the bracket and the bracket's attached to the wall. If you don't reserve your TVs, Dave, in the purchase contract, you gave your TVs up.
What about a painting that is hanging on a wall that's
question.
attached to the nail? The nail is embedded in the wall.
So the gig here is the picture isn't permanently attached. It's hanging on a hanger. But in this case, the bracket is attached to the wall and the TV is attached. And there are screws in the back of that bracket, right?
Yes.
It's not hanging on a nail. It's not hanging on a screw, so it's permanently attached.
Okay.
Let's continue that one more since we're having fun with this. Okay? Why, if you have to leave your TV and it's attached and you don't reserve it, why do you get to take your shower curtain with you? Now, in most cases, here's the answer. The shower rod is spring-loaded.
Yes.
And it's not permanently attached.
Yes.
So neither is the shower curtain. But you know your curtains in the living room? If they're on a curtain rod that's permanently attached and the curtains are hanging on the rod, those are considered permanently attached and they must be reserved if you want to keep them.
Interesting.
I love this one. Dave, you bought a home, and when you walk out your front door and you're standing on your porch, you look at me and you say, Wally, I own the land from my front porch all the way to the street.
Well, the easy answer for me is going to say no.
Good. Because there is a right-of-way just about where the sidewalk is
Yes.
that the city owns, and that's typically where the water lines come in.
That's what I was thinking, because it's right out there by the street, and they got to put all that stuff in, and you can't go manipulate all that land. It's got to be left the way it is for the city.
I laugh when people say I'm going to go mow my yard, and they, of course, mow, which you should, all the way out to the curb.
Yes.
But you're actually mowing the city right-of-way. Isn't that interesting?
So I should send them a bill for mowing their yard.
I tell you what, if you're successful on that, get back to me, would you?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, don't call me because I think I know the answer on that one. Do you
Okay.
know if you actually got out in your yard and took a little garden trowel and dug around just about where the sidewalk is, maybe where it meets the driveway, if you dug down about 5 to 6 inches, you would actually find a property pin down in the ground, which marks the corner of your lot. And the rest of it beyond that is city right-of-way.
Okay.
And you don't actually own that land. That's typically in town, in neighborhoods. But it can also be, in the country.
Huh.
This is one that's really interesting because it runs state to state. If a death has occurred inside a home, it must be disclosed to the potential buyer of the property up front. In Oklahoma, true or false?
I'm going to say false.
Good job. Good one. So my wife, Cindy's from California. We've talked about that before. In California, it must be disclosed. In Oklahoma, here's how it works. It's called the psychologically impacted property. And the state of Oklahoma says, here's how it works. You put your home for sale. You know that someone has passed inside the home. You've told me that. I know what my obligation is as an agent. I cannot tell anyone that without your permission. Okay. So here comes a buyer, and they look at the home, and they really like it, and they drive around, and they come back later in the night, and they go drive by, and they see a neighbor out in the yard. And the neighbor standing in the yard and says, hey, I just wanted you to know that I know about 10 years ago somebody passed away inside that property. The buyer says, I wonder if this neighbor really knew what happened there. So the buyer comes to me and says, hey, Wally, you're the realtor that showed me the home. I heard that somebody might have passed away in that property. Is that true? And my response is, we have to ask the seller in writing to respond to that statement because I can't give you an answer. So that's a psychologically impacted property. And Dave, every state handles that differently.
Yeah.
Good job. I think you're going to hit your 70% today. Let's do one or two more really fast. How about this one? You're looking at a home and the owner is selling the home and you close on that property. And afterward, it rains super, super hard for a couple of days and there's water standing in your backyard for 2 days after closing. And you think, wow, the owner should have disclosed that to me. True or false?
I'm going to say no.
That is correct.
Because if I'm in the backyard looking around, I mean, I'm not a surveyor, but if it's bad where I see that there's a goalie or something like that, I'm going to know that, well, if it rains, that's going to capture rain. Or if I can tell that the grading isn't as well, that's on me. I'm going to have to fix that.
Now, I told you your answer was correct. In the case where it didn't would be number one, if it messed up a mechanical system that didn't work right.
Sure.
Let's say that you're on an acreage lot and there's a septic system back there. And now the septic system won't work properly and you have water surfacing, but it's sewage.
Ooh.
And so there are some places around the metro where I know that during really heavy rains, the ground will get so saturated that will keep a septic system from working properly. That would have to be disclosed.
Sure. Yes.
But standing water around the property, poor drainage, water standing after a rain, Dave, if it doesn't enter the home and affect the inside of the home, it actually doesn't have to be disclosed.
Okay.
One more. We're going to go to closing, and the seller is going to give you a general warranty deed. And you think, well, I've heard there's a special warranty deed. Which one's better?
I think this is a trick question because I'm going to say that the special is for something in particular and the general would cover a wider range of things.
Yeah, ring the bell for you. You did it again. Great job. Special warranty deed means there's a special condition in which there could be a title defect.
Yes.
You did it. You did it. So tell you what we'll do.
Okay.
I think these are kind of fun, and we'll add a few of these to each one of our shows. So that's our true or false real estate quiz. We'll do a few more next week because hopefully it will be a little entertaining. Plus, hopefully people will learn a little bit more about real estate and some of the things that are sometimes misconstrued.
Well,
when
and it
buying
makes
or
me
selling
feel
a property.
smarter than I am.
I'm so glad you said that because I really didn't want to.
That was a lot of fun. Now, you have something fun that's coming up on Saturday, May 6th, and that is a webinar for people that want to basically improve their financial situation, maybe build wealth by investing in property, right? Tell me a little bit more about that.
We're going to do that. It's something I've wanted to do for our customers who have bought and sold through Kerr Team over the years. You know, Dave, the first house that Cindy and I bought together after we got married was 1996.
Okay.
And we had that home paid for maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And we have bought multiple properties afterward, never more than maybe 1 or 2 per year. Some we sell. Some we sell as they get a little older. Some we sell because it's just better to do that. But do you know that over 50% of the wealth in the U.S. is in home ownership? And the more homes you own, the more wealth you've got. So what I've wanted to do is an investor seminar that is informational and helps people understand the money they need and what properties they could afford to buy. Let's say that you're a young couple and maybe you have your first child and you think, once my child gets to be 18, 19, 20 years old, I'd like to give them an investment property. Maybe you're 40, 45, 50 years old, and you think, it would be a neat legacy for me to leave my grandkids a home, a property that would spin off cash flows for them and allow them some rental income and it to be a good investment. So this is what I'd like to do. And what we're going to do on May 6th at 10 o'clock, if you will go to wallytalkshouses.com, you can register. It does require registration to attend the webinar, Dave, because you'll get a 5-digit code.
Okay.
And you'll need that 5-digit code to get into the webinar that day.
Okay.
We'll do it through Zoom, be about an hour long, and we will talk about what inflation has done to money in the bank. So if you could go in and take that money, so a REIT, an REIT, is an acronym for a real estate investment trust.
Okay.
It's basically where a guy like you or me would go in and say, I'm going to go invest in this REIT because they are buying homes all across the United States in good areas. And I don't have the knowledge as an individual to go understand the San Diego market, the Lincoln, Nebraska market, the Indianapolis market, or the Boston market. And so I'm going to go put my money in with this investor, let them invest in real estate, and they're going to pay me returns. And so REITs have been buying homes by the thousands across the nation over the last few years, seeing inflation, seeing prices going up, because they know there are people like you and me, whether you got $50,000 in the bank or $4 million in the bank, where the value of our cash is going down. Real estate has always been a great long-term investment. How would I prove that? Cindy and I own 11 or 12 rental properties that are totally paid off, that's spinning off about $12,000 a month in income.
Yeah.
And I am writing off the taxes each year. I'm writing off the management fees because it's a business and I have a property manager. So these have been really good investments for us. And actually, Dave, constitute about a third of our net worth in our real estate holdings. Why would I keep that knowledge to myself? Our show is about helping our listeners, helping our customers. And so I can help you, our listeners, you, Dave, grow wealthy owning real estate, but you got to buy the right thing. You can't pay too much. You got to buy in the right area.
And I don't have the knowledge of that.
You got to get the financing. So rental rates are coming down a little bit, but it is reported nationwide that if you look at the correct numbers, Dave, rental rates are still running at about a 3% increase right now, a 3% annual increase. And the IRS allows you to depreciate the improvements over 27 and a half years. Let me make that real simple. Let's go say you buy a $200,000 home today. And you look at the county assessor's website and it says assessed value $200,000. Land value, $30,000. So the value of the improvements is $170,000. $200,000 assessed value minus the land value. Let's say it's $30,000.
Sure.
So that's $170,000.
Okay.
If I go buy that home for $200,000 today, my accountant documents how much the land is worth based on the county assessor's site, and I can depreciate that $170,000 equally over 27 and a half years. So if I grab a calculator real quick and I say 170,000 divided by 27 and a half, I actually didn't bring a calculator in with me today. So it seems like that number is going to be somewhere around $7,000, $7,500 per year. I don't get to write all that off, but I get a tax deduction based on my tax bracket.
Okay.
So if I'm in the 38% tax bracket, I take that deduction that I'm depreciating, multiply it times my tax bracket, and I've got a great tax deduction. So we're going to get in and talk about in this investment course properties that are currently available that look like the best investments, whether they are single family, maybe duplexes, and I own 2 duplexes, and those are great properties.
Okay.
Let's face it, if you got one side vacant and the other one's rented, you still have income, right?
That's true.
What happens when a house goes vacant and it sits for 3 months? And maybe you've got a payment on it.
Money, yes.
No income whatsoever. So multifamily, 2-family, triplexes, 4plexes, or apartment complexes can be really good investments. You just got to get your financing in line. And the big one is, back about 4 to 5 weeks ago, Dave, we talked about what happens when a property sells, the market's been going up, and the property taxes are typically
Oh,
based on
yes.
the new sales price. Do you remember that segment we did?
Yes, I do, yes.
And so property taxes can go up 50, 60, 70%. In some wild cases, maybe as much as 100% based on how much it sells for. So a home that hasn't sold, maybe the last time it sold was 20 years ago, those property taxes are really, really going to go up a lot. So we'll talk about taxes. We'll talk about insurance. We'll talk about financing options because really, Dave, we'll keep it simple. An investor typically benefits from three things. Can you guess what they are?
Obviously, the value of the property is going to go up. So I'm
Number
going to gain
one.
value of that. And then rental properties.
Yeah, you're not paying the debt, right?
Yes. And then the depreciation that you can write off.
Perfect.
As well.
You hit it on the head. So three good tax strategies or benefits. The property should appreciate. That's where I'll help you, is identifying a good property that's not overvalued, that should appreciate, that's in a good area. There's lots of things to look at here. Taxes, insurance, changes around that neighborhood, rental rates, how much is the land value, how much can you write off? So you hit it on the head, is the value goes up, somebody else is paying for the asset, and you're able to depreciate that property.
Are there varying factors in age of an investor and how long they want this investment property? Are there certain kind of properties that are better for someone that's getting into the game earlier versus getting into it later in life, and how much they should put in at a certain stage of life versus another stage in life?
Yeah, great question. If it were me and I had it all to do over again, I would have bought more rentals. I wish I had 50. Now, I can remember a time, Dave, when I owned 8 homes and 4 of them were vacant and I was panicked. But that was a very, very short stage in the market. I wish I had started earlier and bought some of the things. Unfortunately, I didn't have the cash and credit at that time. There is this thing called owner carry, where if you owned a home and it was a rental and I came to you and said, Dave, I really have all the rentals I can afford and I'm kind of maxed out at the bank. Of course, I probably wouldn't tell you that. But I might come to you and say, Dave, would you finance this for me?
Okay.
How about if I make payments to you for the next 5 years and you carry the note and I'll pay you the interest, and you like that idea because you're getting a payment that includes interest,
Yes.
and I'm paying that to you instead of paying the bank. So that'll be one of the strategies we talk about, is approaching people who might already own a property free and clear that might be willing to finance it. So yeah, I think starting earlier in life is better than waiting.
Sure.
Later in life, there are safer investments. And then there's this thing called, what do I do when that property gets older? And it's what's called a 1031 tax exchange, a tax-free exchange. We're going to talk about all these things in our first webinar. Will be Saturday, May 6th at 10 a.m. with me, with Wally. You'll need to pre-register for that. Here's how they do it, Dave.
Okay.
Go to wallytalkshouses.com. You can hear all of our broadcasts of our show today and all of our past shows that you'll be able to listen to, at home, stream in your car, on your headphones at the gym. All those shows are there at Wally Talks Houses, but at the very top, there's now a link that says register for the Investors Seminar.
Okay.
They'll need to register because the day of the seminar, you'll get a 5-digit code. Actually, I think you get that upon registration, and you'll need to enter that 5-digit code to join us on the webinar, and it'll be about an hour long, and it'll be very informative. If you have any interest in growing wealthy in real estate, I'd like to help you do so.
You're listening to House Talk with Wally Kerr, which airs every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. here on KOKC. If you're thinking of making a move, you can call Wally at 405-330-3000. You can also text Wally anytime at 330-3000 and just ask him a question. If you want a value of your current home, you text him the address, scale of 1 to 10, what it's worth. It's real easy. You can also visit wallyhasthebuyers.com. And if you missed the latter part of this show, if you missed other episodes, you can listen to replays on Wally's YouTube channel or listen to the podcast on all the podcast platforms, including Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, iHeartRadio, probably about 27 others, because Wally is all over there. He's all on them. And again, wallytalkshouses.com is where you can find previous episodes as well. Make sure you join us next Saturday morning at 7 a.m. right here on KOKC. And again, thank you for listening to House Talk with Wally Kerr. And at any time, give Wally a phone call, get him a text, 330-3000.